The leaves are getting ready to turn, and much of the country is getting ready to shut down practical shooting for winter. But first, the world has descended on Whitewright, Texas, a little town outside of Dallas, for the 2025 International Defensive Pistol Association National Championship presented by Beretta. The match is hosted by Mission 160, which is a private gun club about 45 minutes away from Dallas proper, with 14 stages designed to test shooters' skill, speed, decision-making, and endurance as the summer heat of North Texas bakes off. Competitors from as far away as Kenya, Turkey, and China gather to test themselves to see who can claim the top step on the podium and claim to be the best shooter in the world in the most popular division in the sport of IDPA that has become the standard for what an enthusiast handgun is, the mighty slide-ride optic-equipped carry optics gun. While all types of guns, 8 divisions in total, are represented at the event, carry optics has the lion's share of competitors, with 153 shooters of the 371 attending the match shooting carry optics. Of those 153, 84 hold the rank of Master, which is the highest classification you can get without match performance, and in the division there are 3 Distinguished Masters, which is only given out for a very high performance at a national championship or world championship match. The characteristics of a carry optics gun are a slide-ride optic on a gun with a magazine that weighs less than 45 ounces and fits in the box. Ports and compensators are allowed, and the magazines may only be loaded to 10 rounds plus 1 in the gun if it's a loaded start. And the competitors will need those fancy guns because the match is riddled with non-threat targets and a lot of distance shooting or headshot-only targets. IDPA uses a time plus scoring model, meaning that at the beep, a clock starts running and will stop recording time only on the last shot fired, and there are 3 scoring zones on each target. 2 0 zones adding 0 time penalty, a 1 zone that adds 1 second, and a 3 zone that adds 3 seconds. Misses on a target are worth 5 seconds, and hits on non-threat targets are worth 5 seconds. Competitors generally shoot from concealment, as with any martial sport. Eventually, efficiencies are found, so large vests are favored because they conceal gear well. However, with the recent addition of appendix carry holsters to the rules, there's a growing number of people competing with appendix rig and no vest. Stage Alpha, presented by IDPA China, the gun will start downloaded to 6 rounds, and each target must be shot 4 times, limited, meaning extra shots will be penalized.
Stand by!
And here are your results from the stage and your match score, and Austin Prue leads the match. But there's a lot left to go, so let's take a second to meet Austin.
My name is Austin Prue. I'm a Wilson Combat Team shooter. I've been competitively shooting for 15 years. I'm an IDPA 2-time national champion and 1-time world champion.
Moving on to the first real stage, Stage Bravo's also presented by IDPA China. It's an 18-round stage with up to 3 positions of cover. If cover is available, then competitors must use it, indicated by the fault lines, which are nailed to the ground. If a competitor shoots with a foot beyond the fault line, they're penalized with a 3-second time penalty. In the middle window, there is a non-threat swinging in front of 3 scoring targets, and a lot of the stage time is going to be with how quickly you can get done with that position and into the last position, with 2 20-yard steel hardcover targets. There are about 4 to 5 rounds left in the gun, which will force a standing reload if you dump shots into the steel, which will add about 3 seconds or so on stage time. We start on board with Trevor Blair, who's shooting a Walther Q5 steel frame. He steps to the right on the draw, staying neat in the first position. The second position isn't a terminated fault line, meaning he can stand as far back as he likes, but he opts to get close to it. Shooting at the fault line makes the reload into the window tough. Last position, 1 hit on the steel, but should have enough rounds to finish, and does, and that's a 16-63 for Trevor with no points down and a very tidy run. Next is Team Wilson Combat shooter and Distinguished Master Jeremy Story. And he's way back from the fault line, really stretching out that, but it gives him a better reload into the window. In the window, he's tidy, picking up the targets in 1 pass of the swinger, and in the last position, he's got 1 hardcover hit, but makes it up and finishes well. That's a 15:38 raw time, but he has 2 points down for an adjusted 17:38. Next, we'll join Kevin, who is a distinguished master. He's somewhat conservative in that first position and thinks he needs to reload on the way to the fault line, but doesn't. Kevin opts for the left side of the window, and that's probably not a good idea as it creates a big swing into the last position, and he pays for it with the swinger, which slows him down in the window. And in the last position, Kevin picks up some time, only sending 4 shots, and that's a raw time of 16.64, but he's also 2 points down, so it's going to be an 18.64. Back to Austin, who is the current leader of the match. He's shooting the Wilson Combat Experior 2.0 with a magwell this time. Austin's neat in the first position and a great wide transition onto that wide open target into the window, and he's dumped an extra shot, which means he's going to be tight on rounds in the last position. Doesn't hit the hard cover, but has to send a makeup, forcing a standing load. That's a raw time of 19.57 with 0 points down. Very accurate shooting, but that's a full 3 to 4 seconds off the pace of the stage. Here's the stage leaderboard, and as a result, the new match leaderboard. That brings us to stage Charlie, which is also presented by IDPA China. It's another 18-round stage with basically 2 shooting positions. On this stage, competitors can shoot from right to left or left to right. The right to left plan makes you shoot 3 targets in the open, but you get better sight lines in the middle position, whereas left to right has 2 targets in the open, but you're taking 2 targets as headshots. Here's Chris Harris stepping to the line with his Staccato XC. Chris stays dynamic through the first position on the right. Everyone's going to eat that standing load in the middle position, and there's not really any way around it, but does well. And he's pretty quick into that last position, so that's an 11.51 raw time with no points down. That's going to be tough to beat. Now we're joined by Michael Marino, who's shooting a Canik Rival S with an occluded dot. Michael's going for the left to right plan. He's fumbled that reload, costing him a little bit of extra time, and he's sending extra shots in the last position, costing him time as well. While those shots will save him time for the penalties, it still hurt his raw time. Michael is 1 point down with a 12.81 raw time, 13.81 adjusted. Here's Gordon Ye from Team O-Site, drawing from Appendix. Gordon is a distinguished master as of last year's National, and he's tidy in that first position, staying dynamic on the way in. Really clean load into the last position. And that's an 11.3 clean. Very tidy run from Gordon. And after 3 stages, Chris Harris is leading the match with Jeremy Story of Wilson Combat right on his heels. Let's hear from the people who actually make the match happen, and that is the safety officers. We're going to talk to Joyce, that shooter chick, on Instagram.
My name's Joyce Hernandez. I'm the Florida State Coordinator. I'm a CSO, been shooting for 6 years now. And I love being a safety officer to give back and the camaraderie with all the shooters. Being a safety officer helps you learn the rules better, which makes you a better competitor.
Joyce is one of dozens of volunteers that help make the match possible. Onward to Stage Delta, presented by Hunters HD Gold, and it's an 18-round stage. Competitors start with the gun in hand with 6 rounds in it and all magazines stored in a basket in their support hand. All targets must be engaged strong hand only with 3 rounds versus 2 on all the other stages. Notice the barrels that competitors are going to store the basket on. Left-handed shooters face a bit of a penalty on these reloads with that barrel all the way off to the right. I can say confidently nobody in this match has trained reloading from a bucket. Jeremy Story steps up, and he is a left-hander. Let's see how he navigates the stage. Reloads are going okay, but he's having to turn his body all the way away from the targets. Doesn't like what he sees on that last target, but let's see how it stands up. That's a raw time of 16.87 with 2 points down. Ben Hart from Team Beretta representing the U.S. in the IPSC World Shoot later this week. Let's see how it goes. And he throws his magazines all over the ground. And this is an interesting rules problem. Typically, you get a penalty for shooting with mags loaded with ammo on the ground, but since the magazine start stage, it looks like no penalty is being assessed. Joining the current match leader, Chris Harris. He's only shot that first target twice. That's going to cost a mic. Uh-oh. 4 targets twice, 5th and the 6th. That's terrible. His raw time is 13:36, but he's picking up 20 points for 4 unfired shots. Then those are going to count as mics, and he gets a procedural penalty of 3 seconds. That's an adjusted time of 36:36, which is a disaster. Let's join one of our international shooters, Alperen Kıvılcım of Team Canik, and he's all the way in town from Turkey. He's shooting a borrowed Canik Rival S. Let's see how he does. That's a pretty rough load, and he nearly threw the bucket to the ground. That's a much tidier load, and that's a raw time of 18:19 with no points down. And your stage scores, Austin Prue actually comes back with a 17-6, and then the field is pretty tight behind him going into the 18s. And with that, we have a new leader in Jeremy Story of Team Wilson Combat, with his teammate Austin Prue immediately on his heels, followed by Trevor Blair. But you can see that there's about a second separating our top 3. Stage Echo is also presented by Hunter's HD Gold and is the first to feature a moving target. Shooters start with 6 rounds in the gun, and each target must be shot 3 times for a total of 16 shots. With round counts as they are, there are basically 3 options. You can dump rounds to force a load into the first position, or you dump rounds to force a load into the second position, or you can do reloads with retention between the positions, or you can go neat and finish on a slide lock. Back on board with Gordon Ye of Team O-Sight, shooting from Appendix. Offsets on the draw, and it appears he's shooting clean. He's going to eat a standing load in this first position, and that was quick. Blistering fast raw time, that's an 11:96 down 0. Let's see what Jeremy Story makes of the stage. Jeremy dumps 3 on the popper, trying to get it to show up quicker, which means he's going to have to load into that second position. The reload is bobbled a little bit, and he dumps 2 shots into that first target, so he'll have to load again into the last position. Clean in the last position, that's a 12:59 raw time with 1 point down for an adjusted 13:59. Back on board with Alperen of Team Canik. Dumps 1 shot in the first position, loading to the second. Blistering fast on the trigger, dumping rounds into the second and third targets. Tidy into the last position, that's a 12:81, 0 down. Despite being quick on the trigger, the most efficient plan appears to be just eating the standing load and being tidy. On Stage Echo, Gordon was actually the quickest with the neat stage plan by nearly a full second. I mean, you can see the field is very tight up through the top 10. After 5 stages, we've got a very tight race with Jeremy Story leading with his teammate just shy of 2 tenths behind him. Stage Foxtrot is presented by the National Sports Shooting Foundation. It's only 14 rounds with basically 2 required positions, with competitors finishing on an activated sequence. There's a steel target behind the second to last target, which exposes the final target as a drop turner. Best 2 on paper are going to score. Back on board with Michael Marino as he looks to climb back into the picture. Everything's tidy so far into that second position with a lightning fast load up to the last position. Sends 3 on the popper to drive it down to bring out that drop turner, and that's a raw time of 10:55 with no points down. That's a brilliant run. Here we're joined by Kyle Fender, also shooting a Glock 47 from Appendix. He's quick on that first target into the second position. Kyle's shooting conservatively in this first 2, and that carries that speed on the last 2, which he should be quicker for. Finishes pretty clean, but his hesitation in that second position has cost him a raw time of 11:44, about a second off the pace. Let's see if our match leader Jeremy Story can continue to set the pace. Jeremy draws to the static first target, doesn't even bother advancing to the fault line. He's made that shooting just a little bit harder, and he still has to go to that next position. That didn't really get him anything other than make that target harder. He still was quick at a 10:98, about a half second off the pace that Michael set. So after 6 stages, Jeremy's still in the lead with about a second gap up to Gordon, with Alperen right on his heels, only 200ths behind him. At this point, we've seen 2 drop turners activated by large poppers. Does sending 3 really bring it out quicker? Let's take a look at it. Looking at Foxtrot, both Mike and Jeremy drove the popper down with 3, and it was about 2.5 tenths faster on the popper presentation. Looking back at Echo, Jeremy did 3 and Michael did 2 at the drop turner, and it was about 2 tenths quicker. But Jeremy, if you look at the targets, had a much flatter presentation for his first shot on the turner. So yes, it appears that driving large poppers down do bring out the activated targets quicker. Stage Golf is a 17-round stage presented by the National Sports Shooting Foundation. There are a minimum of 3 shooting positions. A steel target obscured by a non-threat activates a double swinger, sending out first a threat, then a non-threat target. That second target makes the window to engage that threat target very small, and to complicate things, the threat target obscuring the steel is at the dwell for the threat target, so you have to shoot the threat on the move. IDPA does allow shoot-through penalties, so if you wait too long, you're going to hit that non-threat behind the threat target. Let's come back to Chris Harris as he's trying to recover from his blunder on stage Charlie. He draws to the first position to cover, measured on paper, dumps around on steel, grabs that swinger as soon as it peeks out, clean load into that second position, runs all the way up to the fault line. That's a tidy run for Chris with a 13:05 raw time, but he drops 2 points for a 15:05. Now we join Luigi Lee, who's shooting an Armazika firearm, one of the more exotic ones in the match, and possibly the most fashionable on the range with his fur-collared vest. He dumps around on steel to set up that load into the second position, tidy in the second, and just steps out from cover, doesn't even run up to the fault line, and that's a 12:81 raw time. Clean for Luigi, no points down. That's going to be a very competitive run. Jeremy Story steps up, still leading the match. That's clean so far. Uh-oh, that's a makeup on steel. He's not dumping rounds. It's going to cost him raw time, but he gets that swinger out of the way, has a bit of a sloppy load in the second position, and the gun was down when he got there. Doesn't like what he's seeing there, and that's a 14:89 raw, about 2 seconds off the pace, and he's got 4 points down. Here's Gordon Ye from Team O-Site going from appendix, first position. Double taps the activator, first person to actually connect on the steel. Quick load into the second position and precise footwork out past the barricade, stretching out the distance to save the steps, and finishes. Blazing fast raw time of 12:13, but drops a point, falling in behind Luigi for the stage. Gordon's going to pick up about 5 seconds on Jeremy, finishing at 18:98, and the standings shift dramatically with Gordon Ye occupying the top spot as our new match leader. Trevor Blair moves up into the number 2 spot with Alperin on his heels in third. Stage Hotel is presented by IDPA China and is a 16-round stage shot entirely from a seated position at the table. Since magazines start staged, competitors can drop partially spent mags onto the table and not be penalized. Let's see what Jeremy can do to recover. Lightning fast on those first targets, but he modulates his speed into the second row of targets, giving appropriate care. Load goes well onto the third row. There's a makeup on one. That's going to be a 13:85 with 1 point down, so a 14:85 for Jeremy. Michael Moreno is looking to climb back up through the ranks. Mike's a little bit slow on that first pair of shots. There's a bit of delay in the transition on the second target. He's strong in the third row, and there's one extra shot in the back row. So Mike ends up finishing about a 10th faster than Story at 13:75, 1 point down for 14:75 adjusted. Let's see if Austin can re-enter the conversation for the match. Austin's a little bit slow on the load, but he's shooting confidently. He's actually dumping rounds on the second row target so he can drop the mag on the ground. Load off the table is quick. 2 for everybody in the third and fourth rows. That's a 13:92 raw time, also dropping 1 point for a 14:92. So Michael, Jeremy, and Austin finish in second, third, and fourth on the stage. So after 8, Gordon opens up about a 2-second lead on Alperin. Jeremy still in the conversation, about 2.5 seconds adrift. Stage India is a 16-round stage presented by IDPA China, and it's interesting because there are 2 plans. You can sit back and snipe all the targets from the back and eat a standing load, or you can spend a lot of time running up and making the shots easier at the expense of time. Here we are with Kevin, and he steps up and off the draw takes the open targets on the right and back into the left position. Reloads across the back. And Kevin stays in the back, and that's a 13:74 raw for Kevin, dropping only 1 point for a total time of 14:74.
Are you ready? Stand by.
Now Austin's drawing the right, which means he's going to have to eat a standing reload. And he does with a brilliant load. Finishes on the left, a pretty tight work there. That's a 12:60 raw time, a full second quicker than Kevin, but drops 2 points for a 14:60 adjusted. Let's see if Jeremy can re-enter the conversation. Looks like he's doing the same plan as Austin, and he's tidy through the right side. Ooh, the load, the gun goes out of battery and loses time getting it back in. To the left. And that's a 14.23 raw. Not helped by his gun going out of battery, but 4 points down. This will be interesting to see how Michael Moreno does this with an occluded sight. That's brave shooting so far on the right. To the left, ooh, overruns the fault line, but recovers quickly. That's a 12.46 raw time with 2 points down for 14.46. 12.46 is blistering fast. Let's see if Trevor Blair can re-enter the conversation for the win. Oh, he's right off the draw, staying in the first spot. He can't move much. Going to the second position. He's doing the running plan, not the sniping plan. Dumping around to get a running reload and to the front right. And finishes front left. While Trevor was 0 down, his raw time is between 3 to 5 seconds slower than the leaders. So here's your top 10 for India. Jeremy has a rough stage and gives up ground. And with that stage win, we have a new match leader with Michael Moreno, who's now leading the match with less than a quarter-second gap to Gordon Ye, but Austin Prue is only 0.08 of a second behind Gordon. Still anybody's game going to Juliet. Stage Juliet is an 18-round stage presented by Canix. Shooters start in the open with 2 targets coming up to a fault line where 8 more shots are required. No doubt the match director is trying to encourage a reload with retention, but I promise everyone will just do a standing load on steel. The second popper activates a max trap, exposing that last target in that position. Then the shooter must advance to the second position with 2 targets, and then there's an option to go right or straight in the final position. Let's look at Michael, our current match leader. Michael opts to draw to the first position of cover and make it one 12-round position. He goes 1 on the popper rather than 2 to bring out the max trap a bit quicker. Second position with a soft stop, shooting quickly, then staying left to the last position, 3 in the last position. That's a 14.99 raw time. But Michael tags a non-threat for a 5-second penalty. I suspect Michael just gave up his lead. Let's see if Gordon Ye can capitalize on Michael's misfortune. Gordon stays dynamic on the draw into the first position. Whiffs on the activator, that's a small price he'll pay, but connects on the second. Into the second position with a hard stop, then chooses to go right. Didn't like what he was seeing there in the last position, and that's a 15.84 clean. With those 2 makeups, he probably could have been in the high 14s. Austin similarly is going to look to capitalize on Michael's mistake. Austin stays dynamic, getting into the first position. Load goes well. Hard stop at the second position, and he goes left. Gun is up, aiming on the way into the last position, and tidied to finish. That's a 14.78 clean, so Austin was able to exploit Gordon's makeups and finish a full second ahead. Austin wins the stage with the second of a gap to Gordon, with Michael finishing outside of the top 10. That should, and it does, put Austin Prue in the lead for the first time since the first stage. Gordon is about a second adrift from Austin, and Michael Moreno falls all the way down to 4th. Stage Kilos, presented by Nighthawk Custom, is basically a single position stage with 13 rounds required. The match director probably tried to encourage a reload with retention into the final position or breaking up the position with a reload across the wall, but I doubt anybody's going to do that. Everyone's going to eat a standing load. Let's join our new match leader, Austin, to see where he sets the bar. That's a really slow draw for Austin, but he explodes out of position when dynamic into cover. Sends extra shots to force a reload in transition that'll cost him a small amount of time. He's careful on the last 2. That's a 9.51 raw with 1 point down for a 10.51. Let's see if Moreno can redeem himself. Michael's quick on the draw, but stays static in the transition that leaps into position. Because Michael didn't take that territory in the wide transition, he's going to give up time to Austin. That's 10 seconds flat, but drops a point. It's a respectable run, but about a half a second adrift of Austin. Let's check in with Jeremy, see how he's doing. Jeremy bobbles the draw a little, but draws to the right target, then moves left. As a southpaw, the lean to that left side of the barricade is going to be a little bit easier for him. Killer reload. Jeremy finishes up half a second slower than Austin at 10.13, but drops no points, so he's picking up nearly half a second overall. So Jeremy does take the stage win, but Austin does finish well. What's this going to do to the overall? And Austin opens up a gap of Gordon Ye just a bit going into our 12th stage, Lima. With only 3 stages left, Gordon, Michael, and Jeremy are running out of time to take back the win. Stage Lima is a 16-round stage presented by O-Sight. The gun and all the magazines start on a table, and the competitor will have to choose whether to shoot in the four corners of the stage or bring the ammo back to the back and shoot in the back too. Shooting is faster than running if you have the skill, but shooting becomes much harder at the back of the bay than running to the front. Let's see what Gordon does. Gordon opts for the running plan, which means he's likely to reload from the table on the way back. Load from the table goes well. Finishes clean in the last position with a 16:22 raw time, no points down. Let's see if Michael can gain some ground. Let's find out. So Michael's stowing a mag on his way to the back, and he's running a sniping plan. He misses a bit with his footwork and has to adjust in transition to the back row targets. Guns up on the way to the second position, and Michael's nearly a second quicker than Gordon at a 15:41 raw, but drops a point for a 16:41. Michael set a bar. Can Austin answer?
Are you ready? Stand by.
Austin runs up, and he charges the gun at the barrel rather than on the way to position while he's stowing mags. Shooting brilliantly in that first position with a clean load on the way to the second. Small makeup shot there, but he's super quick in transition. That's a 15:31 raw, about a second quicker than Gordon, running to each position, but Austin's clean. With the gap on the stage, Austin extends his lead to Gordon by nearly 3 seconds, and Michael is going adrift even further with just 2 stages left. Unless Austin makes a huge error, this match may be stitched up. Stage Mike is an 18-round stage presented by All Alpha High Performance, and it is a single shooting position with all targets at equal priority, but it brings back the old school IDPA threat target holding 2 weapons similar to the hands of a non-threat. While this is a novel stage design, it's not going to trip up the top guys at all. Let's see if Gordon can make some territory. Sporty shooting, very quick load. He transitions all the way wide and works his way back to the center. That's an 8:25 clean for Gordon. That's going to be tough to beat, but Michael is sure going to try. Michael draws to the middle. Interesting choice. Shooting fast. Oh, that's interesting. He chose a very wide transition starting on the right side. That's going to cost him a little bit of raw time and a makeup. That's an 8:44 raw from Michael, but he's down 0. So now Austin must answer to secure his lead. Austin draws to the right and works left. That's an okay load. 8:35 raw, only giving up a 1/10 of a second to Gordon. So the results of the stage are in with some familiar names at the top, which means that the overall results are going to be largely unchanged, except for Jeremy Story, who climbed back to 4th. Stage November, presented by IDPA China, is the same stage as Stage Alpha. Competitors start with 6 in the gun, best 4 hits per target limited. The disaster factor on this stage is very low, and the shooters are so strong I doubt we'll see any movement in the results. I don't have footage available for Gordon, but his raw time was 6:86, and he managed to drop a point, unfortunately. Michael sees what he can do. That's a very quick 6:61, but dropping 2 points for an 8:61. At this point, Austin has the lead to sit on, basically.
Are you ready? Stand by.
And he doesn't rush at all. He's just calm and in control with a 7:16 raw, down 0. And there's your leaderboard for the cooldown, which takes us to the banquet for the award. What's good to see is Chris Harris, other than his terrible stage delta, fought back to 8th in the overall. Jeremy Story managed to finish 4th and is high law enforcement. Michael Marino occupies the lowest step on the podium with a 3rd place finish, his best at nationals to date. Gordon Ye is on the next highest step next to Austin, and Austin earns his Distinguished Master in Carry Optics. And that is all for the 2025 IDPA Nationals presented by Beretta. Thank you to IDPA for allowing access to make this video possible, and thank you to the competitors who shared their footage to be able to do this. Check out PracticeScore.com and find out more about matches in your area and get out there.